Welcome to Because Marie Said So, the podcast where hot takes, honest conversations, and a whole lot of opinions are standard. We are talking everything entrepreneurship. If we're not talking entrepreneurship, we're not talking. And why? Because Marie said so. Today, we are welcoming Beth Giambrone. She is one of the amazing staffers at IMS Barter. She's an account manager, and she's going to tell us a little bit about a bartering program that a lot of entrepreneurs use for their businesses. Beth, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marie. I appreciate it.
Well, we're going to jump right in. I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about IMS, and what is this bartering system?
So IMS Barter is a business-to-business barter exchange we've been in business since 1985. We are the largest exchange in North America with over 14,000 plus members, and we're in 13 offices covering 52 metro markets across the U.S. I have been, actually, I'm kind of unique as I am a trade broker. That's my official title right now. I've been a trade broker for over 5 years, but being unique is because I was a member when I had my own business for 7 years.
Wow.
And I love trade. Just absolutely love it. I use it whenever, wherever I can. So, I absolutely love it.
What industry were you in where the bartering worked well for you?
I was actually, I owned a jewelry and watch repair store.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was in a mall and everything. So that was the business that I was in.
Wonderful. Are you seeing a specific trend towards specific industries that are using IMS?
Good question. And it's because honestly, it's geared, what works best are service, industry, service, businesses. But we have many doctors, lawyers, that dentists who use trade. You would be surprised, to think of how many different. So basically, like with a dentist, for example, people with insurance, I think a lot of places maybe don't have dental. And so people will use their trade for dental services, instead of, if they don't have insurance for it.
That's a
So
great
that's one
point.
thing. And we have, oh my God, you'd be amazed at how many different dentists that, we have on trade. That's one example of that.
It's interesting because most people with their health insurance, a lot of people will not have dental. So that might be something that's supplemental, it's an additional fee. So they just forego the opportunity to have that type of insurance. So this works well for them. Tell us a little bit about how does the program actually work? I'm a business who actually I am a member. I recently became a member with my business, with my bridal business. And I'm really looking forward to being able to use this barter system. How exactly does it work? How do I get started? And what is the best way for me to go about using it?
Well, what I always tell people is a business owner, I should say, aside from obviously your payroll and your, paying your rent and things like that. What are you writing a check for cash? So say, for example, Marie, and I always give examples when I'm, orientating someone, to IMS is, say you own the building. Okay, do you need landscaping? Do you need any painting? Do you need paving or driveway sealing? Pest control. That's a huge, huge, office cleaning. All of those things that you can get on trade. So it's the things that, again, like I said, we always tell people before you pull out your checkbook, before you write a check with me, because you don't know, if you can get that on trade instead of, paying cash for it.
That's very true. Even my retail business, we use, let's say, landscapers, we use snowplow services. These are things that you don't think about. They're not like the main sort of expenses part of our business where, we're looking at our mortgage or our rent and things like that as our main expenses. But there are other service-based expenses that we need during certain periods of time in the year. So this is a nice opportunity to be able to have those services done in trade. What is the annual barter volume of trade that goes on in this type of industry?
I love this question because actually I was the 5 years that I'd been here, I'd seen this number and I was blown away by it. I had seen it that it was shared on on our website, like, just a statistic that was shared. And I never thought about it. I thought it was great. So our 14,000 plus clients, we had transactions of over 125 million in trade business last year.
That's sizable.
It's unbelievable. Like when I to put it into perspective, even just for me, for someone, who's been involved with it for over 12 years. So yeah, it's just amazing.
So when someone wants to get started, if an entrepreneur is looking into this program, what do they typically need to do? They need to reach out to you?
Yes. If they're, they can go and look on our website. Some people will sign up online. They can, contact me. One of the things that I ask, and I always say to people, and I don't remember if I said it to you or not, Marie, but I always say is I'm confident enough in myself that I can bring you the business. And I'm not trying to be, one of those people, but I know I can bring you the business. But what do you want to spend it on? What are you going to spend it on? That's, I think, more important for the business owner than bringing the business to you. So what are you going to spend it on? If you got it, and there's so many different things that people use it for. Obviously, if you want to put it back into your business, yeah, that's a no-brainer. And one thing I say is, why wouldn't people use their trade to advertise to cash paying customers?
It's a very good question.
I think everybody should do it. It's kind of a no-brainer. But but some people will use it. Like I said, if they need a dentist, optometrist, things like that. They will use it. Some people use it strictly for business. Some people use it strictly for personal. That's their perk. They take the trade and they perk their employees or their families. Travel is huge, huge, huge. And we have our own separate travel department, as well as our own separate advertising and marketing department. So these people, like I work with you guys, they work strictly with just the advertising, marketing, and travel. So, it depends on, like I said, there's been some people like, nope, I can only put it right back into the business. That's all. Some people are like, oh, I'm going to use this for this or that, fun or, employee perks. There's a lot of different, things that, people are looking, that use it for.
I think employee perks too are an unexpected use of it and a real valuable use for many businesses, because if we were to pay for those services and those perks for our employees in cash, it would be an expensive endeavor. And I think a lot of times that's why businesses are just unable to have certain perks for their employees. But that's a very good point, that this is something that can be used for that. Now, walk me through a transaction. So I just, became a member, and I believe we start in my account. I have $100 in my account to start. Walk me through my first transaction.
So, say you're that $100 you have in your account, you're going to go to dinner. We'll just use that. You can go to dinner, your husband, whatever, it's $100, you go there. So basically there's a little card that you got, kind of like a credit card, had your account number on it and your name. When you sit down at the restaurant, you will tell the waitress, hey, this is on IMS Barter. Oh, okay, so they'll know it's going to be, separately rung up than what, normally is done. And when it's done, you give them your card. They'll write out a slip. They'll give you the slip back, and then they will, so the seller always posts the trade. So in this instance, you're the buyer, they're the seller. So they're going to take that 100 from your account. When they post the trade, it's going to go into their account. And same thing, if I was coming to you for a dress, I'm getting married or, whatever, I'd come to your shop, say, hey, Marie, I'm going to, this is on IMS Barter. Okay. When you're ready to, whatever the amount is going to be, when you're ready to do the transaction, you would just need my card number, the dollar amount, and that's it. Then that money will come from my account and go right into your account. And then you can use it for whatever you want. And that's always the thing with new people. They think, okay, well, I'm using this pest, service. So, they have to use, you don't. You can use it for whatever you want. You don't have to, if, that person uses you and you have to, with them. Normally trading, something, you have this pen and this person has this pencil and you just trade it back and forth. So you don't have to, do that. You can use it for whatever you want.
It's such a unique opportunity for businesses to be able to accomplish goals that they might have and purchases that they need to make without having to use cash. How can I make my participation in IMS more of an optimized situation? What do I need to do to be more engaged? What should I be doing now that I just joined this group to get the most benefit out of it?
So the best way to engage with IMS, increase sales and save cash, is to establish a relationship with your personal IMS broker, aka me.
Yes.
Marie. The media department and the travel division, again, which I had mentioned them earlier. Getting involved with the local barter events. I usually try to have a couple a year out in your area. So, I usually do dinners, depends on, what. So I usually try to get out there a few times a year.
This is great for networking also, right?
Before you spend cash on anything, to contact your broker, we're there to service and support, your business. And, just let IMS be part of your annual budget and spending plan, just to help you save cash.
And I would think that the networking opportunity is so much more valuable than what people would realize. So you're not just getting value in the actual transaction of products and services, but you're also getting so much more because of that opportunity to network. And we all know in business and in life that the networking becomes so important because you could just meet that one right person for something that you need for your business, whether it's a product, a service, some sort of, consulting or, anything like that that can help your business. This is something that is another added perk to IMS as well.
At every networking event, like I said, I've been the broker in your area. You guys are great. It's older. A lot of members have been around for 20 plus years. So, they know how it works, who's in it, but every networking event, there's always, at least a handful or more of people like, I didn't know you were on IMS. I would have been using you for, so it's amazing still to me this day, because like I said, people have been around for so long and they're, and I always encourage new members to be there. So, people know. And, I try to, we promote people on phone calls that we make. Hey, I got a new member, Spy Baby, if you're looking for, dresses and gowns, things like that. But also, we have an exchange that comes out every week. It's through email. And, I always send an email that says, hey, new member, but, people are busy. They don't, sometimes pay attention to those things. So yes, I think, the networking events, they're great. They're a lot of fun, very informal. I just have everybody go around your name, your business, what you do, how long you've been in IMS, and it's great. It is a lot of fun. I usually get a really good turnout in your area. So a
Well,
lot of
Beth,
great IMS members out there.
this has been so amazing to be able to connect, learn about the company, learn about the services, and how entrepreneurs can really leverage your services for their businesses and for their personal life as well, and be able to use the products and services as perks for their employees as well. I really appreciate you spending time with us today. And I'm sure I'm going to have a lot more questions down the road, and I'm sure our viewers will want to be able to reach you to ask questions. Where can people reach you if they're interested in becoming an IMS member?
I can, if you want to share my information, with them, you can do that. The website, like I said, there is an online sign up. So, but I get credit for it if, there's a referral. Referrals are, obviously you were a referral.
Yes.
From a really, one of the best, members out in your area. So, just, referrals are the best way to get, our new members, because somebody who's in it, understands it, loves it, is a great person to, salesperson, really.
Beth, thank you so much. Beth Giambrone from IMS Barter. We thank you so much for joining us today on the Because Marie Said So podcast. If we're not talking entrepreneurship, we're not talking why, because Marie said so. Welcome to Because Marie Said So, the podcast where hot takes and honest conversations and a whole lot of opinions come standard. If we're not talking entrepreneurship, we're not talking why, because Marie said so. Today on Because Marie Said So, we are welcoming a very special guest. This guest is coming from one of the most amazing parts of our country, down in the Florida and the Tampa area, Clearwater, Tampa area. We are going to be welcoming our guest, Lydia Jackson from Oh My Gowns in Largo, Florida. Welcome, Lydia. How is it in Florida today?
Oh, wow. We're probably about 98 degrees, 99.
Wow.
It's hot.
I visited your store about a year and a half ago and absolutely fell in love with the area. And I love your store. I love you. I love everything about your whole aesthetic. And so I wanted to bring you on the show because we have so many things in common that we can talk about, with me being a bridal store owner, you being a bridal store owner, and also on the flip side, me being a designer as well, and you having my collection in your store, which I so appreciate.
Yes.
First question, just to get down to it. Share with me a little bit about your bridal boutique. How'd you get into it? What was it your passion since you were a child? Just want to know a little bit about you and your store.
Absolutely. So I was actually a wedding planner for a few years. And during COVID, as we know, everything got shut down. I applied at this beautiful little boutique to try my hand at bridal, and I absolutely fell in love with it. Now my closet's full of dresses made perfect sense. Of course. And then about a year in, she actually offered to train me to fully take over the store. So we've been in business for about 3 years under the Oh My Gowns name, and it's been an absolute dream come true.
Wow, amazing. Tell me a little bit about your experience in the acquisition process. Now, was there something non-traditional about it as far as financing? How did that all work?
So actually, we did almost like a financing between me and the previous owner. Mm-hmm. So even now, I'm still paying her monthly. I do have a full bill of sale, though, but I pay in good faith because we still owe.
That's amazing. You see businesses in mergers and acquisitions that many times we'll have to go to a bank or we'll have to bring on investors. And I think seller financing is really the best way for the seller to be able to move their business out and bring someone else in to give it a little bit new life. And it's also great for the buyer because you can get to work. You don't have to worry about going through the hoops with a bank or other, VC venture capital opportunities and going through having to give up equity to investors. So this is really one of the best ways, in my opinion, to be able to acquire a business and just be able to get your hands dirty and your feet wet and just jump right in to get the business rolling. With the bridal market being such an emotionally driven customer purchase, do you feel that technology has enhanced or devalued the in-person shopping experience?
Personally, I think it's completely devalued the experience. I feel like probably about 80% of the brides that I have seen get dress regret is 100% due to online influence. Them influencing their decision making versus what they love and what they feel for that dress specifically.
This is an interesting perspective because we see that often as well in my own location, where the expectation of that Instagrammable dress, the way it looks on the model, the bride expects it to look the same way on her, or we're seeing brides coming in with just unrealistic expectations with budget, where they'll find an Instagrammable dress that's an Israeli designer, designs it, and it's $10,000. And then they'll come into our store and say, hey, I've got $1,000 budget, but I'm looking for a dress like this. So do you experience that same frustration? Because sometimes we do as well.
We do. And I'm such a big believer in no body shaming. And I feel like it has caused a wave of very insecure feeling brides when it comes to themselves and viewing what they feel is beautiful.
How do we get around this? How do we handle a bride that has an expectation from a photo, comes into the store, tries on maybe the same exact dress, but is struggling with the fact that maybe she doesn't love it as much as she did when she saw it in the photo?
Personally, I just try to support them through it. I mean, it's something we all experience as women. We can relate to that experience more than anything. And so I just try to relate to them and make them feel very comfortable and maybe find a dress that she does love on her specifically.
That's a great point too, where maybe that isn't the dress just because you saw it in a picture. Because let's face it, even years ago before the internet, we had bridal magazines that had printed photos of dresses, right? So the brides, usually for the shower or when a bride just got engaged, mom, aunt, grandma would buy the bridal magazines and they would gift it to the bride to go through to see what style she liked. So it's the same type of thing, in my opinion, where just because you're seeing a photo in a magazine or online doesn't necessarily mean that that's your dress. It might give you some ideas, right, as to what you might like. But I think the key is when you get into the store, making the bride really try on a wild card, something that maybe she wasn't thinking, and also, offering some options to her. So that was a really good point. On
top of the fact that we tend to use regular everyday women for our models when I hire photography. So that way when they are comparing, they're comparing themselves to a normal image of a female versus the modeled version where it's edited and changed in so many ways.
This is a good point now with AI as well. We're seeing photo shoots being replaced with AI. And being on the designer side and having to spend a large budget on photo shoots where you're flying models into specific locations, photographers are coming from different locations, you've got, people who are doing hair and makeup and helpers, the budget balloons pretty fast. And if AI can help to kind of mitigate that expense, many times it's a nice tool to use. So I understand that. On the business side of things, what is your opinion? Most of us are in these Facebook groups that are dedicated to bridal store owners or designers or bridal industry reps and people like that. What's your opinion of social media groups that are focusing just on bridal store retailers only?
I love them. They have created a sense of community. When you need help, you're able to get that from somebody else who maybe has more experience and more knowledge. It's where I met you. You never know what opportunity might lie in one of those groups.
Exactly. I think we had a really nice opportunity to do, even though you couldn't go to Chicago that year, we had an opportunity to do a fashion show for you. And then we were able to FaceTime you directly. And that's how you had, the opportunity to view the collection. So that I'm part of the groups as well, and I do appreciate them. But what I deal with specifically as a bit of a challenge is that because I'm a designer and I'm on the wholesale side and I'm also on the retail side, many stores and many admins on those Facebook groups don't look favorably upon me. And instead of looking at me as someone who has a little bit more knowledge of both sides of the fence and have the experience, in addition to being a business coach and college professor and an entrepreneurship professor. So I feel this challenge sometimes where I'm almost discriminated against because I don't fit in this one identity, this box
Right.
of bridal store owner. Do you feel that it's a conflict of interest for me to be on both sides of the fence?
I don't, and I think more designers need it. How can you dress a bride if you're not dealing with them every day?
Exactly. Yeah, that was my thought as well. I mean, I feel like for my stores, I love to help people, and I it's just my nature where I take whatever skill that I have, whatever knowledge that I have, and I try to help people in their own businesses. Now, every business is different from business to business. So a bridal store in Largo, Florida is going to be very different from a bridal store in Syracuse, New York. And
Absolutely.
what's great about it, though, is I can learn from you on the retail side and I can learn from you on the wholesale side because now I know based on what you're telling me, which is primary research. And that's what entrepreneurs look for. We are looking for the data from our customers to tell us what they want, how much they're willing to pay for it, how often that they're looking to purchase it, and if we can get repeat customers out of the product or service that we're selling. So it's been a really wonderful opportunity for me to develop relationships with people like you because you're open, you're honest, good, bad, or indifferent. You're like, hey, Marie, this is going to work for me. This isn't going to work for me. And sometimes you'll say to me, like, you know what? What's working for you, Marie? Because maybe I need to try that too. So it really
for sure.
opens up this conversation of free flow communication. One of the things too that I like to communicate in business is it's really important to surround yourself with people that are not like you. So if I meet a store from an area that's completely different demographics than where my store is located, if their customer base is just a little different, their market share is a little different, I want to meet those people because those are the people that I'm going to learn the most from. And I feel like that's where the sweet spot is being out of that comfort zone, out of the people that are like you, where you really learn the most. So I appreciate so much our relationship because of that.
Always. I appreciate it too. You've helped me in a lot of ways.
So tell me a little bit more about your business. What makes Oh My Gowns the place to be in Largo, Florida?
Honestly, we are budget orientated. I focus very hard on bride budgets since having the background as a wedding planner, I know how expensive things can get. On top of that, we accept everyone, regardless of where they come from, what they look like, what shape they are. We want everyone to feel welcome and like they're coming to a home where family is every time they step foot in our doors. We are one a bride at a time. We don't try to load the store. It's such an emotional experience that we want that bride to feel that way, to feel beautiful in their own right.
You can feel the energy when you walk into your store. You can feel the beautiful aesthetic. You can feel how organized it is. You can feel how comfortable it is and how truly invested and dedicated you are, not just financially, but emotionally. And you're very connected to and understanding your customer. And that is something that is immeasurable. You can't put a price on that.
You truly can't. We've laughed, we've cried with our brides, we've celebrated them in so many ways.
It's wonderful to be able to see people who are taking over businesses from those who have retired. We're seeing a lot of people retiring, looking to sell businesses, specifically also too in the bridal industry, because after COVID, we did see many businesses decide to the business owners were of a retirement age and they decided that they were just going to move on from that. But we also saw many did maintain their businesses and then decided later, I have maybe another 5 years. It was after COVID, and then I'm ready for retirement. So I do see that now we are seeing a lot of turnover, and we're bringing in a lot of new blood into the industry. And what I do appreciate too is the fact that we're able to look at the acquisitions of these businesses and be able to study them. And one of the things that I'm most interested in is talking about how they acquire capital, and the fact that you were able to work out, a deal with the seller was really probably the one reason why you were able to take it over, right?
It was. I threw every bit of my life savings that I could into this shop, and without that deal, I definitely wouldn't own it right now.
So this is something definitely that with venture capital and with access to venture capital being a little bit more difficult for women and minorities in entrepreneurship, for the fact that you don't want to give up equity in your company, that is a wonderful opportunity. Is there anything else that you want to share with us about you, your store, your future, and what plans you have coming up?
Hopefully we can get some more of your dresses in soon. We've been working very hard. We're going through a recent remodel. We're trying to bring that vintage feeling back into that shop and just breathe it some new life. We just love everything different, and that includes in dresses, including in people.
That's wonderful, and I can't wait to see it when it's done. I'm going to come down and visit. We're going to do a trunk show. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That would be amazing.
Well, Lydia, thank you so much for spending this time with us on Because Marie Said So podcast. And if we are not talking entrepreneurship, we're not talking. So thank you so much, Lydia, from Oh My Gowns in Largo, Florida.
Bye.
Take care. Michael Lynn is a nationally recognized expert on tipping who has written over 80 research publications on this topic. His work on tipping has been covered by the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the International Herald Tribune, The Economist, and Forbes, as well as by ABC's 2020, BET's Nightly News, and NPR. A former bartender, busboy, and waiter, Mike received his PhD in social psychology from The Ohio State University in 1987 and has taught in the marketing departments of business and hospitality schools since 1988. He is currently the Michael D. Johnson and Family Professor of Services Marketing at the Cornell University School of Hotel Administration. Mike has a new book coming out titled The Psychology of Tipping: Scientific Insights for Services, Customer, Workers, and Manager. Published by Springer and should be out by the end of this year. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into it here.
Okay.
First question that I have, we spoke a little bit yesterday about your book and about all of your amazing research, and you've done some extensive research on tipping. And with over 80 research publications, you're the person to go to with a question on tipping. The basic question that our viewers want to know is, what do you leave for a tip? What are we supposed to be leaving for a tip? And who should we be tipping?
And the short answer is that's up to them. There's no God of tipping, right? There's no authority that gets to tell you what you should do. And I'm including me, right? And that includes Amy Vanderbilt or Miss Manners. There's no God of tipping. Having said that, there is a social norm and a social expectation that you're going to tip 15 to 20% in U.S. restaurants. Okay? Because of that expectation, servers are paid less than in many states are paid less than the standard minimum wage. Furthermore, servers are required by their employers in many cases to share portions of their tips. They have to tip out the bartender, for example. And often the formulas that are used are a percentage of the sales that person has, rather than a percentage of their actual tips. So that if you fail to tip a server, that person is often waiting on you, making only about $2.35 an hour. On top of that, they're going to have to pay, in many cases, 1% to 3% of the sales amount to the bartender, regardless of whether you tip them. They could, in fact, end up paying for the privilege of serving you. And that just doesn't seem right to me personally. Okay, so I feel a social obligation to tip in restaurants, and I tend to comply with the norm, which is 15 to 20%. Is it legally required? No. Is it morally required? Arguably, there's controversy over that. There are people who think it is morally required. There are other people who think it's morally repugnant. I tend to think it's an amoral issue. It's more of a social, in my view, it's more of a social than moral obligation. So I'm sorry, I'm elaborating beyond probably what you wanted when you asked that question.
No, this is exactly what we're looking for, is everything that you have to offer. You have done the research. The viewers want to hear everything that you have to say.
Okay.
So my next question is, what industry, aside from, typically when you tip, you're typically tipping in the restaurant industry, right? Or some sort of service. What other industry aside from restaurant industry have you seen becoming more prevalent?
Wow. Certainly online content is the obvious one. That's the major one, but you also see more people asking for tips in quick service and other retail counter service establishments. I've even had my I have a lawn service, and they send me an electronic bill, and it includes an option to tip, which seems kind of odd since I'm working with an individual who owns his own business and we contracted for the price of those services. Why would I pay more than we had contracted? But just because people are asking doesn't mean that they're getting it, right? So, where is tipping expanding? Those are the main ones. Certainly in the restaurant industry, this notion that you would tip for carryout is relatively recent. Nowadays, most restaurants will ask you for a tip when you go to pick up carryout, but your listeners should know that it's only, I would guess, 25, maybe 30% of customers, even occasionally, tip for carryout. So just because they're asking doesn't mean you should feel obliged to give.
We see in my industry, the bridal industry, at my retail store, we're seeing more and more people asking about tipping. We don't have like a sign that says tips welcome. We don't have a tip jar or anything like that. But what I think we're seeing more of this because our tipping culture seems to be more in our face. Is that it seems to be that way because of the reaction that we're getting from our customers. And this might be, further research for us to work together on, where we can look at our industry and see, in the bridal industry, how tips are changing and how we're actually starting to get tipped. I don't remember 30 years ago when I started receiving tips and I didn't expect them. Do you feel that tipping is a form of communication sometime, either good or bad, saying, okay, you did a great job, so I'm going to give you a large tip, or I wasn't as happy with the service, so the tip I gave you was unfavorable?
Absolutely, at least occasionally, tips are an expression of satisfaction and gratitude. Not always is that the case, but in many cases it is.
And based on your research, is there something that service workers can do to get a better tip?
Wow. Of course. And there's so many things. And it depends in part upon the service worker. But let's talk about waiters and waitresses, since that's where most of the data is. First off, the biggest driver of tipping in restaurants is bill size because of that 15 to 20% norm. So one thing servers can do to increase their tips is to sell more. They'll walk home with larger dollar and cent amounts in their pockets. In terms of increasing tip percentages and therefore tip amounts, holding bill size constant, the factors that seem to work best have to do with social rapport. And anything a server can do to establish a social connection with the customer is going to improve tips. How do you do that? You do it by introducing yourself by name. You do it by calling the customer by their name if you know it, preferably surname, not on a first name basis, unless they're a regular patron that you're quite friendly with. Touching the customer briefly on the arm or shoulder, standing close to the table, perhaps even squatting down next to the table when you take the order, because that brings your eye level down to the customer's eye level, makes you appear to be closer, and all of those are nonverbal signals of liking. All of these are things that each of the activities I've just described has been experimentally tested and proven to increase restaurant tips.
That's interesting. And when I think about even my own industry in the bridal industry, I think about when we're working a customer in an appointment and we become much more intimately involved with the group, whether it's, speaking a little bit, more with grandma or mom or, sister or cousin, and getting to know them on a much more intimate level and, sharing stories or sharing examples. And you really become part of the families. And over years of doing business, we wind up receiving so much repeat customer, base that we have just because of that. And do you feel that repeat customers in the restaurant business that we're seeing, that whether it's a bartender that, sees a repeat customer, let's say once a week, are the staff members, are they relying on these customers on a weekly basis to come in anticipating I'm going to see, Joey on Friday night and I know that he tips well. So, what sort of expectation in your research have you seen that, bartenders or servers with repeat customers, are looking to those tips to pay bills and all of that?
So I don't know of any research that has asked servers what their expectations of repeat customers are. There's a lot of research looking at the effects of patronage frequency. And in restaurants, regular patrons tip more. Even in rideshare, regular patrons tip more. The only exception that I'm aware of is in coffee shops, where regular patrons actually tip less than less frequent patrons. That's based on data from Square, not data that I myself have collected.
Are we seeing specific controversies with the topic of tipping? Are there controversies happening, in our media regarding tipping? I know that recently we saw politically that tips are no longer going to be taxed. How is that? Is that a controversy? I mean, I wouldn't think it would be.
Sure.
But yeah, how is that affecting everyone? Yeah.
Okay. So first off, the proposal is widely popular. Roughly 2/3 of the American public supports the idea of no taxes on tips. Okay. And that's true regardless of whether you're a Republican, Democrat, or Independent. The public likes the idea. Mm-hmm. In fact, many people under the previous system where you did tax tips would leave cash tips even when they paid the bill with credit card in order to help the server avoid taxes. Okay. But notice I said 2/3 of people support it, 1/3 of people don't. Okay. And the rationale behind it is that you want to help these low-income people. And by helping them avoid taxes, you're effectively increasing their incomes. The problem with this as a public policy is that it helps the wealthier service providers more than the less wealthy service providers. People who don't make some service providers are making six-figure incomes. They don't need that help, right? Yet they're going to benefit from it not having to pay taxes because they're in a higher tax bracket, et cetera. There are plenty of people who depend on tips for their income that aren't paying taxes anyway because their income is so low, and because servers hide much of their tip income and so avoid taxes on it in that way as well. It's also arguably just not fair that some class of low-income workers, i.e. those who are tipped, don't have to pay taxes on a portion of that income, but other people, janitors, others who may have a comparable annual income, it just doesn't come in the form of tips. They're going to have to pay regular taxes. So of course there's controversy about this. But it's a done deal. Fortunately, from my perspective, they've limited it, right? It's, I think the first $6,000 of income, it's only if you make less than a certain income. And so it's the unfairness and potential impacts are less than they would have been had they not scaled it way back. But still, this just strikes me as it was political pandering and not a serious policy to help people.
From a business perspective, with my employees receiving tips, this policy for me really relieves the stress of me having to keep record, because I used to have to keep record of all the tips that were coming in, and if it was a certain amount, what had to be reported, and it just was becoming so difficult within the business because a customer can directly give cash to, let's say, the seamstress, and she might not tell me, or directly to a stylist, and they might not tell me. So this to me was a little bit, it made my life much easier as far as, keeping track. But I definitely can see how it could be controversial.
Yeah, I would caution you. I'm not a lawyer of any kind, much less a labor and employment or tax lawyer. You should consult with them. But it's not all taxes that are exempt from tips. It's only a small portion of them.
Right.
My guess is that you are required to continue to keep records and to document that that they haven't made above that minimum, tax-free amount.
Exactly.
Your obligations as an employer may not have changed at all.
Exactly. That's a really good point. And I think when you're in the restaurant industry, because the tips are so much a part of the accounting and so much a part of, how the employees are paid, it definitely does become a little bit burdensome, I think, to the businesses. But that's part of doing business in that industry, I guess.
Yes.
What actually is the whole history of tipping? How did it even come about?
We actually don't know a whole lot about the worldwide origin of tipping. There are a lot of different stories. People have argued that it comes from the Latin phrase stipend, right? I have heard the argument that it's thieves' cant, tipper me your money, tipper meaning give. I've heard that it comes from the English word tippling, like drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So that it, there are just lots and lots of different stories about the origins of tipping. The one that I like the best, that if I had to put my money on it, I would, but only if you forced me, is that tipping evolved in eating and drinking establishments as a way to forestall envy. It's natural for humans to envy others who are better off than them. And the patrons of eating and drinking establishments are having a good time enjoying themselves, socializing, eating, drinking while the staff is laboring away. It would be natural for those staff to resent their customers, to envy them. And tipping evolved as a way for the customer to say, hey, don't envy me. Here's some money. You can have a drink on me later. Okay. And this was a theory. I'm going to give credit to George Foster, a now deceased anthropologist from the University of Berkeley, who advocated this position. And he points out that the word for tipping in many languages around the world translates to drink money or money for drink. And that's some support for this notion, this theory about the origins of tipping. But there are not a lot of good historical analyses of this. And mostly I can give you theories and stories and not tell you for sure. There is a little bit more knowledge about the history of tipping in the United States. Okay. First off, there are records of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson giving tips to their own slaves for particular jobs and projects they had done. So it goes way back, and it's not always to commercial. Tips were not always given just to commercial service providers. But tipping really wasn't popular until after the Civil War. And presumably what happened is that after the Civil War, Americans traveling abroad encountered the custom of tipping in Europe and brought it back with them. After the Civil War, there were also a lot of unemployed former slaves looking for employment. Many of them went into service industries where they were paid sub-minimum wages for railroad, companies, red caps. Many were employed in the railroad industry and relied on tips. And so this influx of labor who needed the tips, combined with the people coming back and bringing the custom back with them, helped contribute to the growth in tipping. But I've also seen arguments that it used to be that employers didn't like tips because they thought of it as customers trying to bribe their staff for extra portions, extra treatment, what have you. And that was problematic. So they didn't like the idea of tipping, and they didn't want their staff accepting tips. But at the time, in hotels, for example, your room and board went together. They were packaged together. It's called the American plan. And the European plan was to separate the lodging from the meal component. But during Prohibition, people weren't able to make as much. They couldn't. Alcohol is a big source of profits and income, yes. And that dried up, at least as a legal source of income. So bars got turned into restaurants and cafeterias and lunch places, and people started, and because this major source of income was gone, establishments had to get much better at accounting for cost and benefits and doing a proper accounting so they could price things properly and make the profit. And what that ended up being is they started separating out. It accelerated adoption of the European plan, which is separation of food, which now you had separate menu prices. Once you have separate menu prices, it's harder for the servers to steal the food, to give extra portions to the customer. And so some of the objection to tipping went away. And if it allowed them to pay lower wages, that was beneficial at this time of austerity. And so I've also heard that Prohibition contributed to the growth. It is true that tipping didn't really take off until the 1930s in this country. I mean, it's existed since its very founding. It started growing after the Civil War, but it was really in the 30s that it became really common and popular.
I love history, and I love seeing how history has affected our present day and looking towards the future on how things may change based on our technology. I use occasionally, I'll use like DoorDash and Uber and apps like that. Sometimes I'm unsure, do I physically tip the person who's driving me or delivering, or how do I know if that's already included in the price or if I'm going to get a message later about adding a tip? Because sometimes I'm like, depending on the app, I'm like, I don't use it enough where I know what to do. What do you recommend in?
Once again, I want to say that it's up to the individual person. I'm not telling anyone what to do. But if you want to leave a tip and you're not sure that the app is going to provide you an opportunity to leave a digital tip at a later point in time, go ahead and tip in cash. You can then refuse to leave an additional digital tip, knowing you've already tipped them, right? Should you feel obligated to do that? I don't think so, but it's certainly an option that's available to you.
Yeah, that's a good recommendation, because especially for people in my generation that might not be using these apps as often as our Gen Z population, let's say, where they're always using DoorDash for McDonald's even, and McDonald's could be across the street and they're still using DoorDash or or one of these apps. Tell me a little bit about tip fatigue. Do you feel that in our current day tip culture that we're seeing more tip fatigue than in the past, or less, or what's the current status?
Yeah, well, first off, the term tip fatigue is a relatively new term, and it's describing this growth in public exasperation at being asked to tip larger amounts. Sometimes people are facing screens that are starting at 20 and going up to 30 or 50%, and that seems crazy to them. They're also seeing screens asking for tips, whether it's their, plumber, electrician, yard boy, quick service counter worker, and finding that this is getting out of hand. And so it's created this negative sentiment that's called tip fatigue. That large portions of consumers in surveys indicate that, yeah, tipping's gotten out of hand. They're unhappy with it. I myself, in my research, have seen an increase in the percentage of people saying that they wish tipping, if it were up to them, they would outlaw tipping. They'd do away with it. It went from, in the past, like prior to 2016, it was maybe 35% of consumers would say that. I got up to over 50% endorsing that recently.
It's interesting because you are seeing, in my experience, I'm seeing in more establishments, aside from the restaurant industry, we're seeing more people expecting a tip in what I'm seeing. And it's very surprising to me. Like I say, even in my own industry, like we don't ask for tips, but it's surprising how many people will ask and they'll say, what's the expectation? I think a lot of customers don't know what to do. They're not sure. They want to make sure that they're keeping up with the social expectation, and they want to make sure that the business that they love and they patron often is being tipped properly. But at the same time, if they're going there, time and time again, and they're a recurring customer, am I going to be expected to pay an extra tip every single time that I go? And so I think that a lot of times customers don't really know what to do. And sometimes they are a little intimidated where they don't want to ask. But in our industry, we do get people asking from time to time.
Right. Just as a comment on this notion that people don't always know what to do, the oldest, most widely publicized social norm on tipping is restaurant tipping. And it's been 15 to 20. Amy Vanderbilt, Emily Post has been saying you should tip 15 to 20% since the 1950s, up until now, okay? long history of 15 to 20%. You go anywhere, that's what you're going to hear. 15, 20 years ago, before COVID, and there's more unease now and uncertainty now. This was before that uncertainty. And I just asked people open-ended, how much are you expected to tip in restaurants? Only about 2/3 of consumers said 15 to 20%. It's a third, 30%, at least 30% of people didn't know that the restaurant tipping norm was 15 to 20%. So you can imagine other norms that don't get nearly the kind of publicity that the restaurant tipping norm does and haven't been as stable. Uncertainty is sky high. People don't know what they're expected to do. And that's a source of anxiety for consumers.
I'm fascinated by your knowledge on this subject. And that's why I always keep asking you questions, especially relating to my own industry. Is there anything else that is part of your research that surprised you? Is there anything that you thought, would be a certain answer to a question but the real answer really surprised you and was opposite of what you thought?
Probably the thing that surprised me the most that I've learned is what I just described, that roughly 30% of the country doesn't know you're supposed to tip 15 to 20%. The second factor or finding that surprised me was how weak service quality was as a driver of tipping behavior. When I stand outside of restaurants and interview customers, asking them to rate their service and then tell me what their bill and tip amounts were, I find a correlation on average of about 0.2. That means 4% of the variability of the differences in tips left by different dining parties, 4% of it is explained by the customer's own rating of service. That means 96% of the differences are caused by something other than service, right? That service was such a weak predictor of tipping shocked me.
And we traditionally think better service, better tip, and that's the reason, it's so interesting.
If you ask people, why do you tip? The number one reason they give is to reward good service. But that just shows you that people don't know why they do what they do.
Sure.
I mean, I don't think they're deliberately lying. They just don't know.
Right. Is there anything else that you want to share with our viewers about this topic? Anything that that has bugged you that you need to let the public know, even if it's just to start tipping if they're not a tipper?
No, I don't want to force people to tip. I guess what I want to say is digital tipping screens mean that you're being faced with more and more requests to leave a tip. Just because lots and lots of people are asking you for a tip doesn't mean that it's the new norm. Okay? The establishments don't get to establish what the norm is. I don't get to establish what the norm is. Etiquette experts don't get to establish. The norms evolve from the behavior of consumers, from the bottom up. And so for it to become normative, most people need to be tipping. And I can tell you that in restaurant carryout, most people are not tipping. It's a minority who are tipping. So even though everybody's asking, doesn't mean that's the new norm. Even in coffee shops, based on the data I have, I would say roughly 50% of transactions are not tipped. So is that really a norm? Maybe not.
Right.
So the problem in the past, when people put out a tip jar, you could see whether people were putting money in or not. And for most counter service workers, people were not leaving a tip. If you then left a tip, it's because you were genuinely happy and willing to tip and you wanted to reward the good service or what have you. But you didn't feel a social pressure because you could see not a lot of people put money in. The new digital screens hide that information from us. We don't know how many people are responding. And I think there's a natural tendency to assume everyone wouldn't be asking if people weren't giving. And I want to say that assumption is incorrect. Don't let yourself be pressured into tipping where you don't want to. But whether you tip or not is up to you. Having said all that, I mean, I'll often want to tip people. I just really resent being pressured to tip.
Well, this was such a great half hour with you. I am just fascinated by everything that you've done with the research and all of the information that you have for our viewers. If we have viewers out there that weren't sure about tipping, now they have much more information about it and can decide, what's comfortable to tip, where it's comfortable to tip. And we heard it right from our expert, Professor Michael Lynn.
And let me, if you don't mind, if you want to, I've got 80 publications, over 40 years of research on this topic. I have a lot more to say than we've covered, but most of it is in the book. And so I would encourage people who find this topic interesting and want to learn more about what scientists are interested in and have learned and what those findings mean for customers, for service workers, and even for their managers. That's what I wrote the book for. It should be coming out later this year by Springer.
So if all of our viewers are looking to get information on all of that data and seeing everything that you've done, they can go right to the Psychology of Tipping, Scientific Insights for Services, Customers, Workers, and Managers. This is coming out. It's published by Springer, coming out by the end of the year. And we are so looking forward to seeing this book come out. And I'm personally looking forward to reading it. So thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Professor Michael Lynn, nationally recognized expert on tipping, who's written over 80 research publications on this topic. We appreciate you visiting us today. Also, reminder to our viewers, keep an eye out for the Psychology of Tipping, Scientific Insights for Services, Customers, Workers, and Managers. This is published by Springer. It should be out by the end of the year, and it will share with you everything about tipping, any information that you're looking for. Well, this concludes our episode of Because Marie Said So. We appreciate all of our viewers and our guests and would love to see you again soon. Why? Because Marie said so.